On the far side of the galaxy, the planet Valera was dark and cold, covered with tall, shining towers and blue forests that looked silver under the moon. The people who lived on Valera were not like humans. They were called the Vel, and many in the galaxy whispered that they were a kind of vampire. The Vel lived in shadows, stayed away from sunlight, and were proud and strong. Their queen ruled with wisdom and power. Her daughter Lyra was known across the planet for her beauty and bright silver eyes, which could see in the dark better than any other. One evening, as the purple sky glowed with 3 small moons, Princess Lyra stood on her high balcony, looking down at the palace gates. There was excitement in the air. For the first time, humans were coming to Valera, not for war but for peace talks. Lyra had never seen a human before. She had heard stories about their weak bodies and their warm hearts, stories about how they lived in sunlight and needed food every day instead of once a week like the Vel, but Lyra was curious. She wondered if the stories were true or just old tales to scare children. A line of shining silver ships landed in the palace square. Lyra leaned forward, trying to see the visitors as they came out. The queen was there, wearing a long dark cloak, her crown shining with red gems. The council members and guards stood in 2 lines, holding sharp silver spears. The humans walked out slowly, their faces nervous but brave. There were 3 men and 2 women, all dressed in white and blue uniforms. Lyra's eyes stopped on one of the human men. He was taller than the others, with dark hair and calm eyes. He carried himself like a soldier, but looked at everything with care and respect. When the queen stepped forward to greet the human leader, this man bowed his head politely. Someone whispered his name from behind Lyra. "That one is called Ethan," the servant said. Lyra kept watching Ethan. She saw how he moved, how he smiled at the alien children who peeked from behind a pillar, how he listened carefully when the queen spoke. Lyra felt something new inside her. She wanted to know more about him. The queen brought the humans into the grand hall for the welcoming feast. Lyra was not allowed to sit at the main table yet. She had to stand on the high steps, watching everything, learning how to be a good princess. The hall was full of music and soft lights. Strange fruits and dark red drinks covered the tables. The Vel guests talked quietly, sometimes glancing at the humans. Some of the older council members looked at the humans with cold eyes. They did not trust outsiders. But the queen was different. She wanted peace. Lyra's mother smiled and spoke kindly. Hoping for friendship, Ethan sat near the human leader, but his eyes wandered around the hall. He was not afraid, just interested in everything. At one point, a small alien child dropped a bowl. The loud sound made everyone stop and look. The council members looked annoyed, but Ethan got up, picked up the bowl, and smiled at the child. He gave the bowl back and said something in a gentle voice. The child smiled, and the mood in the hall lightened. Lyra watched all this, and she felt herself smiling too. After the feast, the queen led the humans on a tour of the palace. Lyra followed from a distance, careful not to be seen. She wanted to see Ethan up close. As the group passed through the blue gardens, Ethan stopped to look at a strange glowing flower. He touched its petals with wonder, then laughed quietly when a silver butterfly landed on his hand. Lyra felt a little jealous of the butterfly. She wished she could talk to him, but she did not know how to begin. Later that night, Lyra sat by her window thinking about Ethan. She wondered what his world was like, what he dreamed about, and if he ever felt lonely so far from home. She remembered his kind eyes and the way he made even the council members relax. She had met many Vel men before, but none of them made her heart feel so strange. The next morning, the palace was busy with plans for more meetings. The queen asked Lyra to join her for a walk in the gardens. As they walked, the queen asked, "What do you think of the humans, Lyra?" Lyra wanted to be honest, but she was afraid. She said quietly, "They are different." "I think they are brave?" The queen smiled a little and nodded. "We must be careful, but yes, they have courage. Not all of my council agrees with me, but I hope for peace." Later, Lyra saw Ethan again. He was talking with some palace workers, asking questions about the gardens. Lyra walked by, pretending to look at the flowers. She hoped he would notice her. To her surprise, Ethan looked up and smiled. "Hello," he said softly. Lara's cheeks warmed. She nodded and said, "Hello." They stood quietly for a moment, not sure what to say. Then Ethan asked about the glowing flowers, and Lyra explained their names and how they only bloomed under moonlight. They talked for a little while, and Lyra found herself laughing at one of Ethan's stories about his planet Dot as the days passed. Lyra and Ethan met a few more times by chance, sometimes in the gardens, sometimes in the halls. Each time they spoke a little longer. Lyra began to feel that she understood him, even if their worlds were very different. She felt safe with him, and she saw that he was kind and strong in quiet ways, but Lyra also noticed something else. The older council members whispered more often. Some guards watched Ethan with hard eyes. Not everyone liked that the princess spoke to a human. Lyra worried that her mother would find out and be angry. Still, she could not stop thinking about Ethan. She knew something important was beginning. Even if she did not know what would happen next. The days on Valera were cold, but Lyra's heart felt warm every time she saw Ethan. She waited and hoped for the next time they would meet, not knowing that her life was about to change forever. The next day began with a silver fog hanging over the palace grounds. The air was cold and clear, and strange blue birds sang from the tall trees. Ethan woke early, dressing in his clean uniform. He looked out of his small window and saw the city of Valera coming alive under the light of the moons. He wondered what new things he would see today and if he would meet Princess Lyra again. The humans were invited to walk through the markets with a few palace guards. Ethan walked beside his leader and tried to remember everything he saw. The market was busy with alien voices and the smell of strange fruits and fresh bread. People looked at the humans with wide eyes. Some seemed scared, others only curious. Ethan smiled at everyone, hoping to make a good impression. He stopped at one stall where a merchant was selling small, round fruits that glowed with a soft purple light. Ethan reached out and asked, "What are these called?" The merchant, an old Vel woman, said, "These are called Luna berries, only ripe under the 3 moons." She smiled and handed him one to try. Ethan tasted the berry. It was sweet and a little bitter. He smiled and thanked her, and she gave a small ball dot as Ethan looked around. He noticed 2 small alien children playing near a water fountain. Suddenly, one of the children slipped and fell into the cold water. The other child cried for help, but most adults were too busy or too afraid to go near. Without thinking, Ethan rushed to the fountain and pulled the child out. The boy was shivering and scared, but Ethan wrapped him in his own jacket and smiled gently. "You're safe now," he said. People in the market stopped to watch. Some were surprised to see a human helping a Vel child. The queen's guards were there too? One of them nodded in respect to Ethan. The merchant who gave Ethan the berry came over and thanked him for his kindness. The story of what happened spread quickly, and people started to look at Ethan differently. Later that day, Ethan walked through the palace gardens to clear his mind. He sat near a quiet pond where silver fish swam in circles. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Princess Lyra walking softly on the grass. She wore a blue dress that shimmered like water. Lyra smiled and sat next to Ethan. They both watched the fish for a moment without speaking. Lyra finally said, "I heard what you did in the market today. You helped a child you didn't even know." Ethan nodded and smiled. He needed help. It didn't matter who he was. Lyra looked at him, her eyes thoughtful. "Not everyone here would do that," she said quietly. They started talking about their worlds. Ethan told Lyra about his childhood on Earth, about green trees, summer rain, and sunlight. Lyra listened closely, surprised at how different life was on his planet. She told Ethan about the moon festivals on Valera and the ancient stories her mother told her as a child. As they talked, Lyra found herself smiling more. She liked the sound of Ethan's voice and the way he looked at her as if she was just a person, not a princess. She asked him, "Are you afraid here?" Ethan shook his head. "Not really. Everything is new, but I think there is good in your people." Lyra wanted to know more about Ethan's family. Ethan told her about his parents and his younger brother back home. He missed them, but was proud to be a part of the human mission. Lyra shared that she was often lonely in the palace, with only her mother and servants for company. She said, "Sometimes I feel like everyone is watching and I can't ever be myself." Ethan nodded. "I know what you mean. I felt that way during my training." They sat together until the moons rose high in the sky. When it was time to go, Lyra stood up and said, "Thank you for talking with me." Ethan smiled and replied, "Thank you for listening." As Lyra walked back to the palace, she looked over her shoulder and saw Ethan still sitting by the pond, watching the stars. The next few days passed quickly. Lyra and Ethan met several times by chance, always in quiet places away from the eyes of the palace staff. They talked about their dreams, their fears, and what they wanted for the future. Lyra showed Ethan a hidden garden where blue flowers grew in the dark. Ethan taught Lyra a simple human game, tossing pebbles into a circle drawn in the sand. They both laughed when Lyra won. One afternoon, Lyra heard angry voices in the hall. She stood quietly behind a column and listened. The council members were speaking to her mother, the queen. "Your daughter spends too much time with the human," one council member said. "It is dangerous. The humans are not like us." The queen replied calmly, "Peace must start with trust." "My daughter is wise. I trust her judgment." Lyra felt a mix of worry and pride. She didn't want her mother to be in trouble, but she was glad the queen trusted her. That night, Lyra met Ethan in the garden and told him about the council's worries. Ethan listened and said, "If my being here causes trouble, I can leave." Lyra shook her head. "No, I don't want you to go. I feel like I can be myself when I'm with you." They sat together in silence, the night full of soft sounds and silver light. Lyra felt a warmth growing in her heart, something she had never felt before. She looked at Ethan and wondered if he felt the same. As the next week went by, Lyra and Ethan's friendship grew stronger. People in the palace started to notice. Some servants whispered when they saw them together. Guards watched with sharp eyes. Even some humans in Ethan's team wondered why the princes seemed so interested in their friend. One evening, during a palace celebration, Lyra saw Ethan standing alone on a balcony, looking at the stars. She walked over and stood beside him. They didn't need words. They just stood together, listening to the music coming from the great hall. Lyra looked up at Ethan and smiled. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged with someone. Far below, the city lights glowed. Lyra knew her world was changing. She did not know what the future would bring, but she knew she wanted Ethan to be part of it. As the cool night air blew gently around them, Lyra made a silent wish that her mother and her people would understand her heart. The days on Valera were growing colder, but inside the palace, the tension was rising. Princess Lyra's secret friendship with Ethan was no longer a secret. Whispers traveled through the halls like a quiet storm. The council members spoke in hushed tones about the human warrior who had won the princess's attention. Some said it was dangerous. Others said it was impossible. Lyra knew the rules of her world. The Vel never mixed with humans. But her heart was strong, and she wanted to follow it. One afternoon, the queen called Lyra to the throne room. The large doors opened with a soft sound, and Lyra stepped inside. The queen sat on her throne, her eyes deep and serious. "Lyra," she said softly, "we must speak." Lyra felt her heart beat faster. She bowed her head and waited. The queen's voice was calm but firm. "I have heard the council's worries. They say you spend too much time with Ethan. Do you care for him more than a friend?" Lyra did not want to hide her feelings. She looked into her mother's eyes and said, "Yes, mother. I want more than friendship. I want to marry him." The queen's face changed. She looked surprised and then sad. "Lyra, you know the Vel have strong rules. We do not marry outside our kind. It is our way for thousands of years." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "But mother, Ethan is kind and brave. He is not like others say. He respects us and wants peace." The queen sighed and reached out to touch Lyra's hand. "You are my daughter, and I love you. But you must understand, this choice will change everything. The council may not accept it. Our people may turn against you. Are you ready for that?" Lyra wiped her tears. I am ready. I will face whatever comes. The queen looked at her daughter for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Very well, but you must promise me one thing. Do not see Ethan until I say it is safe. We must protect you both. Lyra agreed, but inside she felt a deep sadness. She had to hide her love. That night, she sat alone in her room, staring at the stars through the tall window. She wished Ethan was there beside her. Meanwhile, Ethan felt the change too. He noticed that he was no longer greeted warmly by some of the Vel guards. His team told him to be careful and stay away from the princess. But Ethan did not want to leave her. He knew he could not stay in the palace forever, but he hoped to make a difference. One day, as Ethan walked in the gardens, he heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned and saw Lyra. She looked nervous but determined. We have to be careful. Now, she whispered. My mother asked me to stay away from you. Ethan reached out and took her hand. I will wait for you, no matter how long it takes. They stood quietly, holding hands, feeling the cold air around them but warmth between them. It was hard to say goodbye, but they knew it was only for a time. Days passed without their meetings. Lyra focused on her royal duties, trying not to think about Ethan. The queen worked with the council to prepare for a meeting where they would decide the future of the princess. At the council meeting, many voices spoke. Some said that a marriage between a Vel and a human would break the traditions and harm their people. Others believed that peace with humans could bring new strength. The queen listened carefully, her heart torn between love for her daughter and duty to her people. After the long meeting, the queen announced, "We will test the human warrior. If he can prove his courage, loyalty, and respect for our ways, we may allow him to marry the princess. But the tests will be difficult." When Lyra heard this, she felt hope. She believed Ethan could pass the tests. But she also knew it would be hard for him. Ethan was told about the tests by the queen's messenger. The first test was courage. Ethan was asked to enter the dark caves outside the city where dangerous creatures lived. The Vel believed only the strongest could face those shadows. Without hesitation, Ethan prepared. He walked into the caves alone, his heart steady. The creatures inside were strange and frightening, but Ethan moved with calm and skill. After hours, he returned with a small glowing stone from the deepest part of the cave. The Vel guards watching nodded in approval. The second test was loyalty. Ethan was asked to protect a Vel elder during a ceremony. A group of rebels planned to disrupt the event. Ethan stood guard all night, ready to defend the elder. When the rebels came, Ethan fought with skill and courage. He did not give up, even when outnumbered. The rebels fled and the elder was safe. The last test was respect. Ethan had to learn the ancient Vel customs and show he understood their culture. He spent days studying with the palace teachers, learning the language, the history, and the traditions. During a special ceremony, Ethan spoke in the Vel tongue and honored their ancestors. The crowd watched in silence, then applauded. The queen was proud but still cautious. She met with Ethan privately and said, "You have passed the tests with honor. But the council must agree. This decision is not only about you and Lyra, it is about the future of Valera." Ethan bowed and said, "I will do whatever is best for the people of Valera and for Lyra." Lyra waited anxiously for the council's decision. She hoped the love between her and Ethan would be enough to change old rules and fears. One evening, the queen called Lyra to her chambers. "My daughter, the council has decided. They will allow you to marry Ethan if you both choose. It will be a new path, but it is your choice." Lyra felt tears of joy. She hugged her mother tightly. "Thank you, mother. I will be strong," but she knew the road ahead would still be hard. Many would not accept their love. Still, Lyra believed that, together, they could bring peace and hope to both their worlds. The morning after the queen's decision, the palace was busy with preparations for a grand meeting. News of the possible marriage between Princess Lyra and Ethan spread quickly. Some Vel were excited about the change. Others were worried or angry. The city buzzed with whispers and questions. Lyra felt both hope and fear inside her heart. That day, a sudden alarm rang through the palace. The loud siren echoed in the halls, and the guards rushed to their stations. A group of rebel vampires had attacked the city's outer walls. They wanted to stop the peace and the union between the Vel and the humans. The Queen called for calm and ordered the soldiers to defend the city. Ethan was quickly summoned. He joined the Vel guards, ready to protect the palace and the people he had come to care for. Lyra watched from a high window, her hands trembling. She wished she could be brave like Ethan. The rebels came in waves, dark shapes moving through the cold night. The battle was fierce. Ethan fought with strength and skill, protecting the guards and the people around him. At one point, he saw a group of rebels heading toward the palace gates. Without hesitation, he ran to stop them. In the chaos, a rebel threw a sharp blade at the Queen. Lyra saw it from her window and screamed. Ethan moved faster than anyone else. He jumped in front of the Queen and blocked the blade with his arm. The pain was sharp, but Ethan did not fall. The guards captured the rebels and drove them away. The palace was safe, but the night left many wounded. Lyra rushed to Ethan's side. She held his arm and looked into his eyes. "You saved my mother," she said softly. Ethan smiled, though the pain showed on his face. "I would do anything to protect you both." The Queen came forward and placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You have shown your true courage and loyalty," she said. "Not just in tests, but when it mattered most." The court cheered for Ethan, and many Vel began to see him differently. After the battle, Lyra and Ethan spent more time together, but they still had to be careful. The council had agreed to let them marry, but not everyone was ready to accept it. Some families spoke against the union, and old fears returned. One evening, Lyra's closest friend Myra came to visit. Myra was a young Vel woman who had always supported Lyra. "Do you think your people will ever accept Ethan?" she asked quietly. Lyra sighed. "I hope so. He is kind and brave. He loves this world and me, but it will take time." Myra nodded. "I believe in you, Lyra. Your love can change hearts." Lyra smiled, grateful for her friend's words. Meanwhile, Ethan learned more about Vel culture. He studied their history and traditions, trying to understand what mattered to them. He wanted to be ready for the life ahead with Lyra by his side. One day, Ethan was invited to a ceremony in the palace. The Queen explained that it was a tradition to welcome new members into the royal family. Ethan had to show respect and loyalty to the Vel ancestors. During the ceremony, Ethan spoke in the Vel language and wore a special cloak made of silver threads. He promised to protect the Vel people and honor their ways. The crowd watched carefully, and many smiled in approval. Lyra watched with pride. She knew Ethan was doing his best to become part of her world. Their love was growing stronger, even with the challenges. As the wedding day approached, the palace prepared for a great celebration. Guests from across the galaxy were invited. The humans and the Vel would come together to witness the union of two worlds. On the morning of the wedding, Lyra stood in her room, dressed in a flowing white gown that sparkled like the stars. She looked at herself in the mirror and took a deep breath. Her mother entered and smiled. "You are beautiful, my daughter. Today is a new beginning." Lyra nodded. "Thank you, Mother, for trusting me and Ethan." The Queen hugged her tightly. "I am proud of you both." Outside, Ethan prepared for the ceremony. He wore the royal colors and felt both nervous and excited. He thought about how far he had come from his home planet. Now he was about to marry the woman he loved and become part of a new family. The ceremony was held in the Great Hall. The walls were decorated with glowing flowers, and the air was filled with soft music. The Queen spoke, welcoming the guests and praising the courage of the young couple. Lyra and Ethan stood before the crowd, holding hands. They looked into each other's eyes and promised to love and protect one another. When they exchanged rings, made of crystal, the room filled with light. The people cheered. The Vel and humans began to dance together, sharing food and stories. The old fears seemed to fade as new friendships grew. Lyra felt happiness she had never known. She looked at Ethan and knew that their love had changed not only their lives, but also the future of two worlds. As the celebration continued, the Queen whispered to Lyra, "You have done well. Your courage and heart have brought hope." Lyra smiled and held Ethan's hand tightly. Together they stepped into a future full of promise, love, and peace. After the wedding celebration, the palace slowly returned to its usual quiet. But for Lyra and Ethan, life was full of new challenges and hopes. Many people had accepted their marriage, but some still held old doubts and fears. Lyra knew their journey was far from over. One morning, Ethan was invited to meet with the council again. The queen said, "Ethan, to be truly part of our world, you must learn not only our customs, but also our duties. You will be trained in the ways of the Vel warriors." Ethan nodded, ready to face whatever came next. The training was hard. The Vel warriors moved with great speed and strength. They trained in the arts of stealth, combat, and strategy. Ethan worked hard every day, trying to match their skill. Sometimes he felt tired or discouraged, but he never gave up. Lyra often watched him during his training. She admired his determination. One day she joined him in the training yard. "You are doing well," she said softly. Ethan smiled. "I want to be worthy of you and your people." Their bond grew stronger with each day. They shared stories of their childhoods, hopes, and dreams. Lyra showed Ethan secret places in the palace gardens where rare flowers bloomed under the stars. Ethan told Lyra about Earth's oceans, mountains, and vast skies, but the peace they found was fragile. Some members of the council were still unhappy with the marriage. They believed that humans could never fully understand the Vel, they whispered. Warnings to the queen, hoping to change her mind. One day, a messenger arrived with troubling news. A neighboring planet, once friendly, was building an army. They saw the Vel-human alliance as a threat. The queen called a meeting with her council and Ethan. "We must prepare for possible war," the queen said. "Ethan, your knowledge of human tactics can help us." Ethan agreed and began working with the Vel commanders. He shared ideas from his own people's history and strategies. Lyra stood by Ethan's side, proud and strong. She knew that their marriage was more than love. It was a symbol of unity and strength. She believed that together they could protect their worlds. The days passed with training and preparation. Ethan learned to use Vel weapons, and the Vel warriors studied human technology. The two cultures mixed in new and exciting ways. One evening, as the moons rose high, Ethan and Lyra sat in the palace garden. "Do you think we will win if there is war?" Lyra asked quietly. Ethan looked at her and took her hand. "If we stand together, I believe we can face anything." Suddenly, alarms sounded across the city. The enemy fleet was approaching, the palace prepared for battle. The streets filled with soldiers and citizens ready to defend their home. Ethan led a group of warriors to the outer defenses. The battle was fierce and loud. Bright lasers and flashes of light filled the sky. Ethan fought bravely, protecting his new home and people. During the fight, Lyra worked with the healers, helping those who were hurt. She moved quickly and calmly, her heart full of hope and worry. The battle lasted through the night. In the early morning, the enemy fleet retreated. Lyra was safe for now. The queen praised Ethan's courage and leadership. "You have proven that you are one of us," she said. Lyra smiled, tears in her eyes. She knew that their love had helped bring peace to their world. After the battle, the Vel and humans worked together to rebuild and heal. Lyra and Ethan's marriage became a symbol of hope for many planets. Their story showed that even in the darkest times, love and courage could bring light. One day, Ethan and Lyra walked through the gardens, hand in hand. The flowers bloomed around them, and the stars shone above. They looked at each other and knew that no matter what challenges came, they would face them together. Their journey was just beginning. But with trust and love, they believed anything was possible. The weeks after the battle were calm but busy. The people of Lyra worked hard to repair the city and care for those who had been hurt. Lyra and Ethan spent their days helping wherever they could. Their love was strong and grew with every challenge. One morning, the queen called Lyra and Ethan to her chambers. She looked at them both with a smile. "You have done well," she said. "Your courage and love have brought new hope to our people. Now it is time to make a new promise for the future." The queen led them to a large room filled with leaders from many planets. This was a meeting of the Galactic Council, a group that worked for peace across the stars. The Queen spoke proudly about Lyra and Ethan's marriage and the strength it brought to Lyra. Ethan stood tall and spoke to the Council. Together we have shown that different worlds can live in peace. We must work to protect that peace for all our people. His words were strong and clear. The Council members nodded, some smiling with hope. The meeting ended with a new agreement. The planets would work together more closely to avoid war and help each other. Lyra and Ethan's love had inspired something bigger than themselves. After the meeting, Lyra and Ethan walked through the palace gardens, quiet and happy. "Do you think this peace will last?" Lyra asked. Ethan smiled and held her hand. "I believe it will, as long as we stand together." Life continued on Valera with new energy. Humans and Vel worked side by side, sharing ideas and learning from one another. Children played in the streets, growing up in a world where different races could live as friends. One day, Lyra received a message from her mother's closest advisor. It said there was a celebration planned for the anniversary of her marriage to Ethan. The whole city would join. Lyra felt a warm glow inside. She remembered the hard days and knew how far they had come. The celebration was held in the Great Hall, decorated with bright lights and flowers. Music filled the air, and people danced and laughed. Lyra and Ethan stood together, smiling as they watched the joy around them. During the celebration, the Queen made a speech. "This union between my daughter and Ethan has shown us all that love is stronger than fear. It has brought peace and hope to our worlds." The crowd cheered, and many came forward to congratulate the couple. As the night went on, Lyra and Ethan found a quiet spot in the gardens. The stars shone brightly above, and the air was cool and soft. They sat together, hands entwined. "I never imagined my life would be like this," Lyra said softly. "I thought I would always follow the old ways, but love has changed everything." Ethan kissed her hand gently. "You have changed my life too. I have learned so much from you and your people. Together we are stronger." They sat quietly, feeling the peace they had fought so hard to find. They knew that challenges might come again, but they were ready. Their love was a light that could guide them through any darkness. In the days that followed, Lyra and Ethan worked to build a future for all. They visited schools and met with leaders. They shared stories of hope and friendship. Their story became a legend told across many worlds. One evening, as they stood on the palace balcony, watching the moons rise, Lyra smiled at Ethan. "Thank you for choosing me," she said. Ethan smiled back. "Thank you for choosing me. Together we will face whatever comes." The stars shone down on them, bright and full of promise. Their journey had begun with courage and love. Now it continued with hope and unity. The princess and the human warrior had changed their worlds forever.